Hi, I'm Katherine Ambrose, and this is the Empowering Seniors web series. I am online here with Connie Porazka. I hope I said that correctly.
You did.
Oh, good. And so Connie is an expert on joy and mindfulness and focus, and we're going to talk about that today. So welcome, Connie.
Well, thank you, Catherine. I'm so happy to be with you today.
What is important about focus in today's world where we're finding ourselves right now in March of 2020, about ready to flip to April?
Well, Catherine, it's true. These are extraordinary times. Nobody guessed this would happen. The
Mm-mm.
uncertainty of it, and it's like nothing we've experienced. So I'll just back up a little bit and tell you mindfulness. You really can't talk about mindfulness without talking about awareness.
Okay.
So awareness is knowing that something's going on inside or outside of our life. Mindfulness works. The skills and techniques you learn in mindfulness are used to sharpen that awareness. So you talked about focus. Does it seem like everything is a little bit skewed? It's out of focus. It's not normal. It's not the way that we've been doing our life, been doing business for quite a while. So a lot of people are feeling worried and anxious. They're nervous, all of the above. They're overwhelmed.
And so we've recently had a shock where it's been announced that the stay at home might continue across the country through April. Is that right? I might be a little behind on the news. So,
That's what I've heard for Kansas through April 19th, I think is what I heard.
and I thought I heard something about the president going on about through April, and I'm not sure, but I know that people are in shock and wondering how long this could possibly last, what happens next, and how can they relieve some of the stress that they're under thinking about these things.
Well, I think the main thing is, we can't control what the future brings. We have no idea about it, but yet we get into a rut. We get to just, get that in our minds and we turn it over and over and over again. What's going to happen? What if this happens? We think of the worst possible scenarios. And you've got to, with mindfulness, it's interrupting that circuit. It's bringing yourself back to the present moment. And it sounds simple, but it's not easy because we've been conditioned so much in the past, and you have to go through the conditioning. We have a natural default that goes to negative. So you can see mindfulness, it's building up our awareness of where our thoughts go and then bringing them back to the present moment.
That's I think that's really a challenge for anyone. We see that a lot with seniors that have not maybe been as exposed to some of the reading and conferences that some of us have had the opportunity of participating in business. And some of these concepts, I think, can be a challenge. And, I wonder, why is that our natural default is negative? And I think being aware of that is important.
I think that you're right. And it's just the way our brains are wired. So that's the mindset that we come up with. I mean, 98% of the time, we think something bad is going to happen. So you're working against that negative mindset. And then our conditioning. We come to this world, to the spot we are now, with so many expectations and all of the people who said, you should do this, you should do that.
Mm.
And when you start to look at it closer, not all of those ideas, values, beliefs still fit you. So it's almost a way that maybe you can shed some of the shoulds in your life
I
to
love
make
that.
you.
And not should on yourself, HOULD. Um,
Yes, you've heard that. You've heard that.
mhm. Right,
But,
because
oh, sorry.
I that's something that we picked up in business conferences. Not, don't should on yourself. You've got to give yourself a break and make a decision about what your intentions are.
You really do. And those shoulds they can strangle you. And, it's a lot of times they come from the external part of us, the people that we grew up with, school, all the kinds of rules. But, when you talk about a negative, how our brains are negatively wired, the worst negativity is the ones that we impose on ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And, most of the time we've got negative self-talk just kind of following us around all day.
Yeah.
This is going to happen, or you can't do that. We have to get out of that dialogue with ourselves.
And
So,
be careful with how we're talking to ourselves. Talk to ourselves the way we would talk to someone that we really care about.
that's it exactly, because you know what? Every time you talk to yourself like that, you are listening.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just now that we are finding out how very powerful our thoughts are. They used to think that nutrition and exercise really built your health, but our thoughts are so much more important.
And by the way, exercise can really help with our thoughts and our chemical balance as well. And I think too that it helps engage your subconscious mind. Sometimes when you're exercising, it just helps clear some pathways so you feel better, you get some endorphins, and you're able to your subconscious can kind of go to work on some of your challenges, just like when you're sleeping, and sleep is so important.
Yes, I totally believe that. And just getting out of those negative mood states, you can do it when you exercise. And have you heard of the acronym DOSE?
Yes. Tell us
Okay.
about that.
Yeah. So DOSE, this is kind of how I set my day. In the morning, I meditate at 5 a.m. I get up, and for 30 minutes, I do meditation. And then I set in the movement part of my mindfulness. So for 30 minutes, I call it DOSE. So it's dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and the endorphins. So I move. I dance a little bit. I go for a vigorous walk, and I do some yoga. So that's how I keep, mentally flexible and nimble and in a good mood, joyful.
That sounds like a fantastic thing to practice. And if someone hasn't been doing that every day like you have, why would that be something that perhaps they should consider doing, especially during these kind of eerie, unusual times that we're in?
They should consider doing it, and they should consider starting small. I mean, I've worked up to that, and you can start, don't even call it, if you're kind of uneasy about mindfulness or meditation, just say, I'm going to sit here. I'm going to sit here for the next 3 minutes and breathe.
Okay.
And every time that your thoughts wander and they go astray, when you notice it, bring your attention back to your breath. And that's a very simple way to start. And if 3 minutes seems big, and I'm not joking, sometimes it is, just to sit down and settle, start with 2 minutes. And again, not labeling it anything, and taking the time to be kind and gentle with yourself. Don't beat yourself up and think, I'll never get this. My thoughts are too powerful. We have so much going on in our heads, so many ideas and emotions, especially through this turbulent time. And the best thing that we can do, Katherine, is to be kind and gentle with ourselves, just like we would treat a best friend or a relative.
And we are practicing physical distancing, which I think is a more accurate term than social distancing. We can still be social, just like we're doing right now. We can still engage. Viewers are engaging, and they can engage further by talking to us through the threads or picking up the phone and calling us. So I think that being social, even if it's during this time of physical distance, is something. And certain behavior styles need that more than others. And there's a lot of joking going around about introverts may never leave the house again. This is exactly the time they've been waiting for. And the extroverts are suffering.
I've heard that.
So talk about fight or flight, the tendency for humans to fight or flight. And then I like to talk about freeze also, because I have this theory in my mind quite often that we'll see people, rather than making a decision, they will just freeze in front of the television. And scatter is another term I've heard recently, like, oh my gosh, we weren't expecting this real estate market, so we're just not going to do anything right now. And it's easier just to scatter and say, forget about it, than to gather information and make a logical decision. And I would imagine that mindfulness and focus can help with that. So you just don't go into that panic mode or that, press pause on your life mode in front of the television.
Well, that's so true. And, the stress response cycle, again, how we're wired, that negativity, and we're conditioned a certain way. But and this is really in these times, uncertainty and, the enormity of it, we're in a hyper vigilant state. Okay. So we are kind of like red alert, orange alert, and any kind of stress trigger causes us to react. And it causes us to react in pretty much a, overreaction way. And when that happens, there's a whole cascade that goes on. You set off the reaction and your mind spins about 100 miles an hour. It's like a runaway train because you launch into, again, all the, what would happen if I do this? What would happen if I do that? You're overwhelmed with past stories. Oh, well, I bought a house 5 years ago and I wasn't happy with this. And so mindfulness helps you to put a pause. So you're faced with a stressor. Instead of going on the runaway train, you take in a breath. Let's try it with me. Just inhale, pause, and exhale. And by just creating that spaciousness between the trigger and your reaction, you're allowing yourself to respond. And when you respond, you're coming from someplace deeper, more thoughtful, more kind, coming from your balanced brain versus your, kind of primal running through the jungle, being chased by tigers brain.
Mm-hmm.
So pausing really gives you that response time.
Also, if you are in that overreactive state, you may do something or say something that perpetuates damaging energy. You might say something hurtful to someone that you really care about, and that would be another reason just to maintain that calm and pass calm on to those that you love and to your friends. Mm-hmm. And I think too that reaching out to friends and family is a great way to maybe feel better about your personal situation too, if you're reaching out to try to help others and calm others.
Mm-hmm. And that it's a terrific way, and it's a good way too during these times to stay connected, as you mentioned, because there tends to be, with distance, there can be emotional distance as well. But the other ways that we cope, you mentioned, vegging out in front of Netflix, drinking an entire bottle of wine, obsessively shopping, the internet. So those are all, maladaptive ways to cope with stress. And you can use exactly the pause in that kind of instance too, before you launch into that.
So during this time, I think that it is an opportunity for people to catch up on a few things on Netflix and Prime and everything else. There's unlimited great content out there. But if you are spending too much time doing that, that can really hurt your personal growth, your state of mind, and is very unhealthy. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, you're right. Now we do have more time, and there are some fun things on Netflix, things that you haven't had time to watch. And, I'm not shaming Netflix, but where it's a problem is if you're using it to avoid your family, to avoid what's going on in the world. And, you get up in the morning and you're watching Netflix till you go to bed at night. That's probably not the best use of your time. Mm-hmm. So awareness just kind of brings it up for you in that you realize, oh, I'm on a Netflix binge for the last 2 or 3 days. Mm-hmm. And maybe I can pull in and, decide other things to do with my time.
What my family's been doing is kind of sticking to our normal routine and watching TV in the evening when we would normally watch TV, and then keeping productive and busy during the day. And we might check in with the news first thing in the morning briefly, but otherwise doing our best to just avoid that, because we may be living in this state for a while and learning how to really live your life while staying at home And if you're operating a business or you are in sales or doing something like that, I think it's very important to be productive during this time. I lived through the Great Recession, as all of us did.
Mhm.
My industry, real estate, was hit very heavily. And we saw a lot of mortgage brokers and real estate agents just kind of retreat to their bedrooms and pull the covers up over their heads. And those careers can just crash quickly. And I'm looking at this, especially with all the technology that we have at our hands, as an opportunity to build skills, add to our personal growth, catch up on reading. You can see I have books, but you have no idea how many books I have. I mean, I've got books. And so it's a good time maybe to dig into some of that. That Yale course on joy is something I shared the other day. And that's something I intend to work on. And I have a list of projects. So I'm looking at this as a time to really accomplish a number of things. What are you doing with your time?
I'm doing the same thing. I'm staying productive, because I have a business. We did a lot of things in person. Mindfulness, you usually teach in person, but this is a big shift in how we do business. And you're right, we don't know how long this is going to last. This may be our new normal. So I think approaching it with the best possible attitude
Mhm.
and looking at it in a way of growing yourself, growing your business. This could be a lot of positives for us. Is it going to be totally positive? No, there's going to be struggle and challenge. So
Mhm.
being realistic, but I'm with you. Let's grow and change and keep moving forward.
It's really crazy. I mean, I don't know that there were very many people in the world that ever anticipated anything like this happening. And so the fact that your business really is joy and mindfulness is amazing, because people could really benefit from um, pursuing that knowledge. So tell us a little bit about why you went into the career field that you did, and how you prepared yourself for that.
Okay, sure. I'd be happy to share with that. And my reason for getting into it is totally selfish. I had spent 20 years as a pharmaceutical rep in sales and training, and I did not realize what stress was doing to my body and my mind until I found myself in the hospital. So this was 2009, and I had a mental health diagnosis. And at that time, and I had struggled with things for years. And, I decided I'm going to find out everything that I can about my diagnosis, about more of the stress in my life and how I was reacting to things.
Mhm.
So I discovered mindfulness meditation, and that was 2009. I was changed so much. I was transformed. I've never, been able to manage stress, manage things in my life as I can now. So I studied for the past 5 years through the University of California in San Diego. They have a program through the med school there that's stress reduction, mindfulness-based stress reduction.
Mhm.
So I have a certificate in that, and I've studied Google training. So really, I have my master's in mindfulness, Catherine.
And you go out and teach companies normally, and you put on workshops. What are some of the things that you had done until this point?
Into this, I do an 8-week course that individuals can sign up for that, and that's really a deep dive into yourself, into mindfulness. So I do that 4 times a year. And so this is going to change things because we normally do that in person.
Mhm.
I've been on conference calls with other mindfulness teachers to talk about how that will change, bringing it into a Zoom call. So that's exciting to see. And it also opens it up, the accessibility to a lot of people. A lot of
Mhm.
people who may not want to travel outside their home, across town, or people, in Oklahoma that it's not available to. So I'm excited about those changes. And with businesses and organizations, and I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, it's going to be business as usual, but just a different way to deliver it.
Can you share something with our audience that you might teach in the mindfulness training?
Yes, I'd love to. Now, will you do it with me, Catherine?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so
Okay.
this is a good little short exercise. You can do it in 3 breaths.
Okay.
And it's a way when you're going through the day and you're overwhelmed and you just are nervous and anxious, it's a way to bring you back into your body, to ground you.
Okay.
Let's try it together.
Okay.
So get comfortable in your chair. Settle in, uncross your arms and your legs.
Okay.
Okay, sit up a little bit straighter, kind of the noble breath.
Okay.
Okay, and close your eyes if you feel comfortable. And we're going to inhale through the nose and exhale. And the next inhalation, just check in with your head, your neck, your shoulders. Just really be curious about what's in your body right now in that area. So much tension and stress is held in our bodies. And we forget about this as we're chasing around in our minds. So knowing what's there. Second breath. Deep inhale. And now move your attention to the lower part of your body, to your lower back, your stomach, any area where you shove down stress. And again, observing, just noticing what's there for you, a way of grounding back into your body, moving your attention. Okay, third breath, inhaling very strong. Pause, and now ask yourself, what's important now? And then exhale. And then when you're ready, open your eyes.
Awesome. I love that question. What's important now?
And it's just a way to kind of put things back in order, because when you're overwhelmed, you're thinking about things that need to be done inside the house, outside the house. What if this happens? It's soothing to know we can really only function in this present moment and do one thing at a time.
Well, you hear a lot about multitasking. And is there a shift from that as far as the theory on whether you can be effective multitasking?
Well, a lot of people will continue to do it, Catherine, and it's the way, digital media, social media, jobs, kids, everything's coming to you at once.
Mm-hmm.
But, when you're working, it really, makes sense to focus on one task at a time, complete it, and then move to the next task.
That breath practice feels a little bit like yoga. Is yoga something that you'd recommend for people, and can anyone do yoga?
Absolutely. And the mindfulness that I teach, mindfulness-based stress reduction, it does have a component of movement. So there's walking meditation, and then there's also yoga involved with the mindfulness. And I think yoga, again, coming back to your body, grounding your body, discovering your breath, all of those things are so valuable and important to be in the present moment.
What does that mean, to ground your body?
Well, when you're anxious, when you're overwhelmed, it's, everything's going on out here.
Mm-hmm.
You're chasing those thoughts, you're chasing your worst possible outcomes. So grounding is just coming back into your body.
And
when you're
just before we picked up this call too, you had mentioned that we've been so externally driven, and there's a shift with that.
There is. Okay. Well, and the big shift that we're going through now, just our work styles, our consumption styles, awards and recognition, we're always looking outside for what's there to make me happy, what is going to bring me joy, how am I going to advance in my career. We're inside now. We're inside our homes. And, instead of fretting about this and being worried and thinking of doomsday, I'm like you. Let's think of this as a time for growth, as a shift to develop ourselves, on the inside. And, mindfulness, the big teaching here is that you don't need another guru. You don't need another self-help book, but it's when you connect with yourself, with your heart is your GPS, you'll know what to do, where to go. It's direction.
I think that might be a new thought for a lot of people. They might think, well, I don't know that I have a GPS.
Well, everyone does, Katherine, and we kind of get away from it because we're so used to what's on the outside. Mm-hmm. But think about follow your heart or your gut instincts.
Okay.
It's all intuition and trust. We've lost that body-mind connection for a lot of people.
How can people develop their intuition a little bit better?
The very first thing that they can do is just connecting, their body and mind. And as I, said at the beginning, sitting still for 2 or 3 minutes and breathing. Mm-hmm. And, start there. Start where you are. And then, intuition, it's when you start to pick up on your guidance. Okay. Awareness, I talked about that at the very beginning. Mm-hmm. Awareness, there's a Harvard study that's very large, and it says 47% of the time our minds are distracted, we're unfocused. This is the time that we're really kind of in a trance. We're doing things on autopilot. Mm-hmm. So that's half of your life, Katherine.
That's crazy to think about.
It is. Think about, we've had we've all had the experience that you drive somewhere, mm-hmm. you arrive and you think, how did I get here?
I don't even remember. Or you walk out from the store and you're like, where did I park? I think especially if you're on the, you're wrapping up a telephone call or you've taken a telephone call, that it's harder to remember where you were because your mind has been engaged.
It is. So it's increasing that awareness with mindfulness. But I'll share another thing. Neuroscience is so exciting now that mindfulness actually changes the structure of your brain. So a very fascinating thing that they have found is that as we age, normally the telomeres in our brain get smaller and tighter. Mm-hmm. And that may, contribute to the forgetfulness that we have, to those kind of states of mind. Okay. And mindfulness, practicing it even in a small amount, 20 minutes a day, but doing it consistently lengthens the telomeres. So it actually improves your brain. Mm-hmm. It's been shown to shrink the amygdala, and the amygdala is what gives us that fight or flight.
Well, that's powerful because I think that people sometimes instinctively feel like being in a negative state of mind can increase their propensity for chronic disease or just bring about other negative things. And that if we can focus on a positive mindset, that can make a difference in how we feel about things and our physical being.
It totally does. And, as you said, our physical being, stress is, 65% of all chronic illness has that stress-related component. Mm-hmm. And that's inflammation in our body. So when you're in the hyper-aroused, vigilant state, mm-hmm. and you're being triggered by so many stressors as we go through this, mm-hmm. yes, it's contributing to your body, to heart disease, to anxiety, to depression. I don't know, do you know about this study, but there's secondary PTSD from over media involvement. So by watching the news too much, you can have secondary PTSD. Mm-hmm. And that's something, sorry to interrupt, but that's something to keep in mind now where you think, you might miss out on something of the news. I like your strategy of checking in the evening once a day.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you sit there and watch the news, you'll see it just keeps kind of looping through and they repeat a lot of the same stories. And so I don't think that it's really meant for you to sit there and watch it all day. I'm sure they'd be happy for the ratings, but their expectation isn't that most people are going to sit there glued to the TV all day. And I do think that that is, I do think that can really create a lot of depression right now. If you're sitting there and watching the news all day long and the politicians battle back and forth and be there while they're making the sausage, watching every little detail or what they're actually releasing to us, that can really add to your stress, and it's just not healthy. And most of us across the country are starting to get good weather, and so you can get outdoors, even if it's on a patio or a balcony or a yard, and just get some fresh air, get a little sunshine, some vitamin D, which boosts our immunity.
Yeah, absolutely. All very good advice. And turn the TV off and walk away from it, because that can cause so much fear and anxiety. And checking in once a day, that's what I do. That's a great strategy. And then, you're up to date, you know what's going on. And when you can't control it.
So I read a great definition. I mentioned this on another call last week, that anxiety is usually based on three things. You're doing something that you know you probably should not do. There's the should word. Or you're not doing something that you feel you should do. Or you're trying to control something that's completely outside of your control. And that is a huge trigger right now with anxiety, is that none of us can control what's going on in the world. And we have good company because the whole world is going through this.
Yes.
But we can't control anything that's going on in Washington, D.C. or anything else, really. And just our anxiety can just really run away with us. And then if you're sitting there watching TV, you're not getting any exercise, which is really important. And that'll help the dose as well.
Yeah. No, and one thing I'll say about that, our expectations and those shoulds, what I should be doing, what he should be saying, and just your expectations are way up here, how you think things, should go.
Mm-hmm.
And those are how your control issues. Mm-hmm. Well, reality can sometimes be like right here. So in that gap between expectations and reality, that's where unhappiness and suffering occur, because you're pushing against reality. Mm-hmm. Because you want something to be your way. You want it to turn out, you want to go to the grocery store, have all the shelves full. You want it to be exactly like that. And you're causing yourself unhappiness.
Yeah.
So
and if you're shopping too, you're unhappy because people aren't staying 6 feet away or 10 feet away, or they're coughing or sneezing and touching things. And you can't control what other people are doing.
No, and you can't control anything in this world that we live in right now. So that's where mindfulness, being in the present moment, it's not pushing things away, but rather it's accepting what's going on now. And a good mindfulness, I'll give you another little thing. You'll like this, Catherine. Okay. Setting for 3 minutes and breathing. Mm-hmm. Think about every minute just inserting, right now, it's like this. Life is a current wave of up and down. Things are going to change. Mm-hmm. Nothing that happened yesterday went on today. It's all brand new. So just acceptance in that right now, it's like this.
Yeah.
It's not defeatist. It's not giving up, but it's, not pushing away and not being crazy about control.
And practicing the opportunity to roll.
To ride with the wave.
And if you are watching the news, things are changing by the minute sometimes.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we don't need to know all that. We can just check in and find out. Anything else that you would like to pass on to the audience? And they might be watching it today, or they might be even watching it a couple of years from now. So anything else? We're so excited to have some lessons on joy and mindfulness.
Okay. Well, just that it's simple, but, learning from a teacher and then taking those practices, you start with yourself, and then it's the practices that you take, out into the world. So, when you become a mindfulness practitioner, you're really a mindfulness teacher as well, taking it, to others.
I love that.
You love that. Great.
Yes. So everyone has the opportunity to be a mindfulness practitioner. and you
Yes.
become a mindfulness teacher. That might sound like pretty airy-fairy to people around you. How do you respond when people think that sounds cuckoo?
Well, because, I have my own experience with mindfulness, and that's what a lot of people, when they experience it, they change their mind about it. But even without that, science is so strong right now, Catherine. There is study after study that I could cite about the benefits of mindfulness. So, leading with feeling or leading in with logic, it's all there right now. And so let me ask you this,
Okay.
okay? So mindfulness, imagine, what would you do in your life, Catherine, with more focus, with more clarity, with improved relationships, with inner inner peace?
Mm-hmm. It would make all the difference.
It
Definitely.
really does. Inner peace can change so much. You start there.
Mm-hmm. Well, fantastic. You are delightful, and we appreciate your wisdom. And I'd love to pick this conversation up again in the future, and I'll be watching for information about your classes.
Okay, well, thank you for inviting me. It was always fun to spend time with you, and I'll look forward to getting together again.
All right. Thanks so much, Connie. I'm going to end the recording,
Okay.
and we'll exchange a little information and start sharing this out.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.